The rain poured heavily over the abandoned highway as Salman drove alone through the dark forest road. The route was famous for strange rumors, but he never believed in ghost stories. Thunder echoed across the sky while his headlights struggled to cut through the thick mist covering the road. As he turned a sharp corner, he noticed a woman standing by the roadside. She wore a long white dress, soaked by rain, her face hidden behind wet black hair. For a moment, Salman hesitated, remembering the warnings people used to give about this road. But seeing her alone at midnight, he felt pity and stopped the car. Without saying a word, the woman opened the back door and sat down. The moment she entered, the inside of the car became freezing cold. Salman's breath turned visible, and an uneasy silence filled the vehicle. He tried to start a conversation, but she didn't respond. Curious and nervous, he glanced into the rearview mirror. The seat looked empty. Shocked, he quickly turned around. She was sitting there again, motionless. His heartbeat raced. After several minutes, she spoke in a faint whisper, "Stop here." Salman looked outside. There was nothing but darkness and a broken tree near the edge of the road. Trembling, he pressed the brakes. The back door slowly creaked open on its own. He turned back. The woman was gone. Suddenly, loud tapping sounds hit the windows. Wet handprints appeared one by one from outside. The radio switched on automatically, broadcasting an old news report about a woman who died on this very road years ago while waiting for help during a storm. Salman screamed and accelerated, but the mirror showed her face inches behind him, pale eyes and an unnatural smile. The next morning, villagers found his car abandoned on the lonely road, engine off, door open, and fog slowly drifting inside. Late at night, Ehsan was driving back home after a long shift. To save time, he chose the old forest highway, a road people avoided after dark. The sky was moonless, and only his headlights illuminated the endless stretch of empty asphalt. The deeper he drove, the quieter the world became. Suddenly, his car radio filled with static. At the same moment, he saw a woman standing ahead under a broken streetlight. She wore a white dress and stood completely still despite the cold wind blowing around her. Feeling uneasy but unable to ignore her, Ehsan slowed down and rolled the window slightly. She slowly lifted her hand, asking for a ride. The moment she entered the back seat, a strange smell of wet earth filled the car. The temperature dropped sharply, and the windows fogged from the inside. Ehsan tried asking where she wanted to go, but she remained silent. Minutes passed. The road seemed longer than before, almost endless. When he checked the rearview mirror, he noticed her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Startled, he blinked, and she was sitting normally again. Then she whispered, barely audible, "You passed it." Confused, Ehsan asked, "Past what?" No answer came. Suddenly, the headlights flickered, and the engine began struggling. The car slowed on its own until it stopped near a damaged roadside barrier. Ehsan looked back to ask her what was wrong, but the seat was empty. A loud knock echoed from the roof of the car. Another followed. Then dragging sounds moved slowly from the top toward the windshield. Terrified, he looked up and saw pale fingers sliding across the glass from outside. The radio suddenly cleared, announcing an old accident report about a woman who died after being ignored by passing drivers on this very road. Ehsan realized too late. She wasn't asking for a ride. She was choosing who would stay behind next. The night bus had broken down miles away from the nearest town, leaving Hamza stranded on an isolated highway surrounded by thick forest. With no signal on his phone and no vehicles in sight, he decided to walk along the road, hoping to find help. The silence felt unnatural. Even the wind seemed afraid to move. After walking for several minutes, he noticed a woman standing ahead near a faded road sign. She wore white clothes that gently moved despite the still air. Relieved to see another person, Hamza called out, but she didn't respond. As he got closer, she slowly turned and began walking ahead of him without a word. Thinking she might know a nearby village, he followed her. No matter how fast he walked, the distance between them never changed. Soon, fog started crawling across the road, swallowing the surroundings. Hamza realized he could no longer hear his own footsteps. Panic grew inside him. He shouted again, asking where they were going. The woman suddenly stopped. In a weak voice, she said, "You shouldn't have come this far." Before he could reply, she vanished into the fog. The temperature dropped instantly, and whispers surrounded him from every direction. Shadows moved between the trees as if watching him. Hamza ran back toward the road, but every turn looked the same. Then he noticed an old rusted car wreck hidden near the trees. As lightning flashed, he saw a skeleton sitting inside the driver's seat, wearing clothes identical to his own. Behind him, a cold breath touched his ear. "You replaced him." Hamza slowly turned around and saw the woman's face for the first time. Pale skin, hollow eyes, and a cracked smile stretching unnaturally wide. The next morning, passing drivers reported seeing a new figure walking silently along the lonely road, a man asking strangers for help while a woman in white watched from the shadows. Farhan was a delivery driver who often traveled long distances at night. One evening, his GPS suggested a shortcut through an abandoned highway known by locals as the Silent Road. Ignoring old superstitions, he followed the route to save time. The road was unusually empty. No houses, no lights. Only endless darkness and trees leaning toward the road like watching figures. After driving for nearly an hour, Farhan noticed a woman sitting alone on the roadside, her head lowered and hair covering her face. He slowed down and asked if she needed help. Without speaking, she stood up and entered the passenger seat. Her clothes were damp and mud covered her feet. A chilling cold filled the car instantly. Trying to ease the tension, Farhan turned on the radio, but only distorted static played. The woman suddenly pointed forward and whispered, "Don't stop the car." Confused, Farhan nodded and kept driving. Moments later, he noticed another woman standing ahead, identical white dress, same posture. His hands trembled. As they passed, he saw more figures appearing along both sides of the road, all staring at the car. Breathing heavily, he asked the passenger who they were. Slowly, she lifted her head. Her eyes were completely black. "They are the ones who stopped." Suddenly, the engine shut off. The car rolled to a halt despite his attempts to restart it. Outside, the silent figures began moving closer, surrounding the vehicle. The woman beside him smiled faintly and opened the door. The figures vanished instantly, and the engine restarted on its own. Terrified, Farhan sped away and didn't look back. Days later, he learned from locals that drivers who stop on that road are never seen again. Since that night, Farhan refuses to drive after sunset, because sometimes, when he checks the passenger seat, muddy footprints slowly appear again, even when no one is there. Imran loved night driving. The empty roads and silence helped him escape the stress of daily life. One night, while returning from another city, he chose an old highway known for frequent accidents. The locals called it cursed, but Imran laughed at such stories. As midnight approached, a dense fog covered the road, forcing him to slow down. His headlights barely reached a few meters ahead. Suddenly, he saw a woman standing in the middle of the road. Startled, he slammed the brakes just in time. She slowly walked toward the car, wearing a torn white dress. Her face remained hidden beneath long hair, dripping with water. Before Imran could speak, she opened the passenger door and sat beside him. A deep silence filled the car. The clock on the dashboard stopped moving, frozen at 12:03 a.m. Imran noticed the temperature dropping rapidly, and frost began forming on the edges of the windshield. Trying to stay calm, he asked where she wanted to go. After a long pause, she replied softly, "I never reached home." Her voice sounded distant, almost echoing. As they drove, Imran realized the road looked unfamiliar. The same broken signboard appeared again and again, as if they were driving in circles. Panic rose inside him. Then the headlights revealed something horrifying. Dozens of abandoned cars scattered along the roadside, covered in dust and vines, as if they had been there for years. The woman slowly turned toward him. Her hair parted slightly, revealing pale, cracked skin and lifeless eyes. "They all tried to leave," she whispered. The engine suddenly died. Darkness swallowed everything. Outside, faint figures moved between the abandoned cars. The next morning, authorities found another empty vehicle added to the roadside collection. Inside Imran's car, the dashboard clock remained stuck at 12:03 a.m., and a wet footprint marked the passenger seat, fresh, as if someone had just arrived. Rizwan was a rideshare driver who preferred working late nights when the roads were empty and fares were higher. One stormy evening, he accepted a ride request from an unknown location on an old highway far outside the city. The app showed no passenger name, only a blinking pickup point. Curious, but needing the money, Rizwan drove toward the location. Rain poured heavily, and lightning briefly illuminated the deserted road. As he arrived, he saw a woman standing exactly where the map indicated. She wore a white dress, unmoving despite the rain soaking her completely. The moment she entered the back seat, the ride automatically started on his phone without him pressing anything. The destination appeared as a single word, home. Rizwan asked for an address, but she remained silent. The navigation began guiding him deeper into the forest road where no houses existed. Soon, his phone's signal disappeared, yet the map continued working. A strange humming sound filled the car. The rearview mirror began shaking slightly. When Rizwan looked into it, he saw the woman staring directly at him, her eyes pale and emotionless. Suddenly, the app displayed something terrifying, the trip timer counting backward instead of forward. The road grew darker, and fog surrounded the vehicle. The GPS finally said, "You have arrived." Confused, Rizwan stopped the car. Outside was only an old graveyard gate, half buried in mud. The back door slowly opened. Rizwan turned to cancel the ride, but the passenger rating screen appeared automatically, showing hundreds of previous drivers marked as missing. A cold whisper came from behind him. "Thank you for bringing me back." The screen went black, and the car lights shut off. The next morning, police discovered Rizwan's vehicle parked near the abandoned graveyard. His phone still displayed an active ride request, waiting for the next driver to accept. Naveed was a truck driver transporting goods across cities during overnight routes. One night, his journey forced him onto a forgotten highway known for strange disappearances. The road stretched endlessly through barren land, with no signs of life for miles. Around midnight, his truck radio suddenly filled with static. Through the noise, he heard a faint female voice asking for help. Thinking it was interference, he ignored it and kept driving. Moments later, his headlights revealed a woman walking slowly along the side of the road. She looked exhausted, barefoot, and dressed in white. Feeling uneasy but unable to leave her alone, Naveed stopped the truck. She climbed into the passenger seat silently, her presence bringing an unnatural cold into the cabin. As they drove, Naveed noticed something strange. Every milestone marker showed the same distance number repeatedly, as if the truck wasn't moving forward at all. He checked the mirrors and froze. Behind the truck, faint figures followed in the darkness, keeping the same distance no matter how fast he drove. The woman suddenly spoke, her voice dry and hollow. "They followed me too." Naveed asked who she meant, but she slowly pointed toward the back of the truck. A loud bang came from the cargo container. Then another. Something heavy moved inside, scraping against metal walls. The truck shook violently, as if many hands were striking from within. Terrified, Naveed pulled over and opened the container doors. Inside was complete darkness, and rows of muddy handprints covering the walls from the inside out. When he turned back, the woman stood behind him outside the truck. For the first time, he saw her face, pale, cracked, and smiling unnaturally wide. "You stopped," she whispered. The next day, the truck was found abandoned on the highway, cargo untouched. Since then, drivers claim that at night, a loaded truck drives slowly along that road by itself, and a woman sits quietly in the passenger seat waiting for it to stop again. Faison had always been daring, often taking shortcuts through abandoned highways at night to save time. One rainy evening, he drove along a forest road that locals whispered about but rarely used. The trees arched over the asphalt, creating a tunnel of darkness, and the fog rolled in thick, swallowing everything beyond the headlights. Halfway through, he noticed a woman standing motionless in the middle of the lane. She wore a torn white dress, her hair covering a pale face. Her eyes weren't visible, but Faison felt an intense gaze piercing through him. Hesitant yet intrigued, he slowed and stopped. Without a word, she climbed into the back seat. The moment she entered, the car temperature dropped drastically. Faison's breath came out in mist, and the radio turned on by itself, playing old, distorted songs. He tried to speak, but his voice sounded distant, as if echoing in a cave. The woman whispered, "Drive, don't stop." Faison obeyed, gripping the wheel tightly. As he drove, he realized the road repeated itself, the same broken streetlights, the same curve, again and again. When he looked into the rearview mirror, Her face was closer than it should be, and for a fleeting second, he saw dozens of shadowy figures behind her, standing silently along the roadside. Suddenly, the windshield fogged, and handprints appeared, pressing from outside. Faison panicked, pressing the accelerator. The car seemed to lurch unnaturally, taking corners faster than physics allowed. The woman's whisper grew louder. "They are waiting for you." By the time he saw the edge of the forest, a pale hand appeared on the passenger window. Faison slammed the brakes, but the figure disappeared as if it had never been there. The next morning, locals found his car parked on the lonely highway. Inside, the seat was damp, handprints streaked across the windows, and a faint message scratched into the dashboard read, "You stayed too long." Arsalan was returning from a late-night delivery when his car broke down on a deserted highway surrounded by dense forest. The place was infamous for ghost stories, but he laughed them off, thinking it was just old myths. With no cell phone signal and heavy rain pouring, he decided to wait in the car. Minutes passed, and the storm grew stronger. Suddenly, he saw a woman standing under a broken streetlight. She wore a long white dress, soaked by rain, and her hair completely hid her face. Her posture was rigid, almost unnatural. Hesitant but curious, Arsalan unlocked the door. She got in silently. Immediately, the interior of the car grew freezing cold. The heater stopped working, and the windshield fogged from the inside. He tried talking to her, asking where she wanted to go, but she only stared silently. Every time he glanced in the rearview mirror, her head seemed to tilt at impossible angles, disappearing and reappearing as if she was not bound by reality. After several minutes of driving, the road ahead began to twist unnaturally, curving in ways that didn't make sense. Shadows danced in the fog, and faint whispers filled the cabin. Then she finally spoke. "You're too late. They're coming." Arsalan froze. The engine died. When he tried to open the doors, they wouldn't budge. Outside, he could see faint, pale figures emerging from the fog, slowly surrounding the car. The woman leaned closer and whispered with a chilling smile, "Now, you belong to us." At dawn, villagers found the car abandoned on the lonely road. The doors were wide open, the engine cold, and the back seat soaked with a dark liquid that had no smell. A faint message was scrawled on the windshield. "Next time, it will be you." From that day, no one dared travel that highway at night, fearing the woman in white and the figures who claimed every driver who stopped for her. Sammy often drove late at night to clear his mind. One evening, he took a detour through an old highway that locals called Cursed. The road was narrow, flanked by dense trees, and thick fog crept along the asphalt, reducing visibility to almost nothing. As he drove cautiously, he noticed a woman standing at the edge of the road. She wore a flowing white dress, soaked from the rain, and her hair hung over her face. Her presence was silent, almost unnatural. Sammy slowed down, and she raised a hand, signaling him to stop. Against every instinct, he opened the passenger door, and she got in without a word. The moment she entered, the car grew icy cold. The headlights flickered, and the radio started broadcasting static-filled whispers. Sammy's heart pounded as he tried to speak, but his voice felt trapped, distant, and unheard. The woman stared straight ahead, unblinking. Minutes later, he realized the road no longer matched the map. Every curve and sign seemed familiar yet impossible, as if the road looped endlessly. He checked the rearview mirror and froze. Dozens of pale, shadowy figures now lined the roadside, their eyes fixed on the car. The woman finally turned her face toward him. Her skin was ghostly white, cracked, and her hollow eyes reflected no humanity. She whispered, "They wait for everyone who stops." Before Sammy could react, the car shuddered violently. The doors unlocked, but when he glanced back, the woman had vanished. Outside, the fog thickened, and faint footprints appeared on the wet asphalt, leading nowhere. The next morning, passers-by found Sammy's car abandoned. The engine was cold, the seat damp, and the rearview mirror had a message etched across it, "You are next." From then on, the highway became known as the place where drivers vanish, taken by the witch of the lonely road, leaving only whispers and wet footprints behind.